Hey, She Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays Today podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunslick. And if we are cataloging these episodes as ones that are Cairo specific and just up for anyone today, we would put an asterisk by it and it would be up for anyone. Although I don't know. The men, please, the 15 to 20% of you, shoot me a message and let me know, because my guest today, Emma Wilson, we have a really cool conversation about the pressures and timelines that are put on basically how much you need to have your life together by 30. And then if you don't, the career pressures, if you feel like you're in the wrong career, you need to pivot, or the wrong relationship, you're not married, you don't have kids. And we kind of guess that this is a pressure that maybe more women feel, but I would love to hear if you're like, no, actually, I felt a very similar way. So anyways, yes, today is not a Cairo specific, but I do want to ask your grace, forgiveness. I don't know. So in the field of chiropractic, you can get a lot of flack if you don't come across 100% drinking the Kool-Aid, loving it, believing that every person in the world would be better off if they were a chiropractor. And for the sake of maybe somebody listening who doesn't feel like they are that, I do ask some questions to Emma about like the difficulties of being in a graduate profession, a profession that required a graduate degree, and feeling like you may have made the wrong decision. I personally super happy with chiropractic. You don't need to worry. I'm good, but I'm here to ask the questions. So nobody get their undies in a bundle. Also, you want some, like, I'm going to spill some tea. I don't know if that's a phrase. So I'm gonna shit talk is actually what I'm gonna do. So last week, I don't know, we had Dr. Alessandra Colon on, the TLC Crack Addicts star, reality TV star. She's delightful, absolutely delightful. If somehow you're listening to this episode before that one, go listen to her interview last week as well. But I shared it on a Facebook page with a lot of chiropractors. Now, I think that everybody who has a brain knows that the name of the show is, I don't even want to say it's problematic, like with society. I would say, one, I don't know if it's super sensitive to like actual people who are addicted to crack, but whatever. And then also like, chiropractors, you aren't going to love it. They're just not going to love it. They're not going to love the name. I think we all know this. And then I think any of us with a reasonable head on our shoulders would go, I wonder how much say she had in that. Probably none. Do I think that she named the show? Probably not. Do I think that they gave a rip when she said, hey, there's going to be some chiropractors who don't like the name of the show? And they were like, really? Oh, shoot, we'll change it. No, I don't think they thought that at all. So I post the episode, like go listen to it. And then I get like in a Facebook fight with this chiropractor on Facebook who kind of goes like, I don't like the name. I won't watch it. I don't like the name of the show. And so then I kind of say all the things back that I just said now, thinking she'd be like, that's understandable. Nope. Just like continues to be a bitch, like total bitch. At one point, Kirby's like, what are you doing over there? Because you're not focused on Too Hot to Handle. And I'm like, I am fighting with this chick on Facebook. And he's like, do you think Dr. Cologne wants you to do that? And I'm like, I don't care. She's in my girl gang now, and I defend my homies. So then Kirby wrote something super nice and eloquent as me. And then the chick still came back being a bitch. So I don't know. If you happen to know which Facebook page or Facebook group I'm talking about, you can go and find it and go, hee hee hee. But yeah. So there's the drama in my life this week. Apparently, if you are a guest on this podcast and I love you, I am going to go to Facebook fights in your behalf. Oh, there was another person. Okay, I'm sorry, but sometimes we can just be such asshats to each other. And I don't know why. So another person talks about how they don't like how she didn't do a professional or thorough enough exam on the patients on the show. I only watched one episode because I thought it made our profession look bad because she didn't do a thorough exam. And so then I'm like, well, do you think that like maybe editing, like, do you think maybe like they just edited that out? And she's like, I don't care. I think it could like it could have been done better. And so then me just being like sassy because I get sassy. I was like, so you think you could have done better? And she comes back with yes. I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyways. Oh, okay. So I have a little announcement about a, what do we call this? Oh, a jobby. So if you don't know this, if you're at the top tier of my Patreon membership, the Roadmap to Success. If you are hiring an associate, you can shoot me an email and I will blast out the info. So this one is Wave of Life Chiropractic, and they are in a great location. Y'all, they're in sunny Virginia Beach, and you can't see the photo that she attached, but it's pretty. It's very pretty. They're family focused, ICPA, looking for an associate. They're 100% cash. They salary is 60 to 80K. Their technique is diversified, Thompson and activator, and they're 75% mamas and babies. So they have continuing ed, 401k, doctor trainings, membership, personally and professionally. They use CLA scans. Sounds like, I don't know, kind of sounds like my clinic, except, well, we're not 75% mamas and babies. But anyways, and it's on a beach, and we're not that. So this sounds better. Go work for her, not me. So if you are interested and you want more information, one, you can stalk Wave of Life Chiropractic on Instagram or Facebook, or you can email Dr. Carly, DRCARLY at waveoflifechiropractic.com. All right, our guest today. So I have Emma Wilson, and she is the first and only life coach dedicated to helping those who are turning 30 to feel better at this transitional time. After experiencing her own personal turning 30 struggles, Emma began her mission to help others struggling with the 30 pressures, helping her clients to feel more confident and get unstuck in all areas of life, from careers, dating, friendships, finances, lifestyle, and more. And on today's episode, I think we talk about all of those. We talk about getting unstuck in career, dating, we talk about babies, we talk about finance, all sorts of stuff. So through one-on-one coaching, courses, group programs, and her podcast, the Turning 30 Podcast, Emma guides 30-somethings to ditch the timelines and the shoulds to create a life in their 30s that feels right for them. I love this because I personally deal with a lot of shoulds and like societal pressures. So even though Emma and I are both 36, so that was like one of the things I was like, well, wait, what if I already turned 30? Will there be any benefit from this episode? And there was a ton, so don't you worry. So let's pray and get down to it. Dear God, this is such a vulnerable conversation for so many people. And be with anybody who listens to this and feels stuck in where they're at in life, feels like it's too late to make a career change, to make a relationship change, to make a big life change. Just continue speaking to them, please. And if it is what is in their best interest and what you have planned for them, then just continue. Please give them that nudge. I ask anybody listening today, if you find yourself in that boat, listening to this episode and feeling like you need a nudge, just ask God to reveal it to you in some way. And I pray that he does. God, I also pray that you surround them with mentors and smart people who speak truth from you, from a place of wisdom and love and light, to help guide them and encourage them to make big, bold decisions for their life. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, here is my interview with Emma Wilson. So I found you through your podcast. How long have you been doing okay, actually, first, I have a question. On your Instagram page, it says the first. Now, is there like your face is, you know where I'm going with this, because your podcast is turning 30. Have there been spinoffs?
I went through a period around 2 years ago where all of a sudden people started copying me, and it was reasonably near the start of me becoming, bigger and getting more of a community. And I remember at first being like, oh my God, like everyone else wants to be a turning 30 coach. And then I definitely coached myself through that and realized it was a huge compliment that other people, were choosing this niche, but also it's because it's necessary. And I think that it's an age group and target audience that needs to be addressed. So I wasn't, after initially being a little freaked out, I realized, okay, there's more than enough room for all of us. So, but I'm the officially first one that's come out and branded herself as the Turning 30 coach.
Got it. So how old were you when you started the podcast?
So I just turned 36. The podcast has been going for 3 years. Actually, just reminded me, it's almost my podcast anniversary in the next month. So yeah, it's been 3 years in August. So I was 33 when the podcast started.
Okay. Because I was like, all right, I would feel so much pressure, coming up with a name for your podcast is difficult, and so I would be like, okay, what happens when you turn 40? Like, are you going to have to change the name of this podcast? No.
Well, every single podcast interview I've done in the past few weeks, that's the question that I've been asked is, are you going to be doing
Does
turning 40?
Does this mean you're getting old?
I know. And I'm like, is that because I just went from 35 to 36 last month and now everyone is freaking out that I'm like in the second half of my 30s, but I'm not. I'm like, maybe I will do turning 40. To be honest, I think that the message of turning 30 isn't actually really about age. It's about growing older and as women, the pressures that we have, but I think it can be applied to most ages. And it's more about, the societal conditioning and pressures of having to do something by a certain time. So I think that my branding and it can be applied to somebody who is turning 40 very easily. Will I ever change the name? Probably not. I really love the whole 30 thing. So who knows?
Well, and I feel like you can continue to coach, like you're just going to get wiser with your coaching with time of like, yeah, I can still coach those people in that time. Like, yeah, it's like if you, as a chiropractor, if I had my podcast name was like starting a practice, it wouldn't be like, well, you started a practice 10 years ago. Why are you still coaching on starting a practice? It's like, well, because I still know a lot about it.
Totally. No, there is something there of like, obviously the older that I get, the further apart the age between somebody who would maybe first be introduced to my Instagram or my podcast at the age of 28 or 29. It used to be when I first started it that was very recent. And then now obviously like in the next few years, it will be 10 years difference. And I'm like a little bit out of touch with the whole like Gen Z TikTok thing. But at the same time, because I'm in constant contact with my community all the time, my clients are all different ages. To be honest, I coach people who are 24 all the way up until their 50s. So it feels like I'm educated all the time about that. But yeah, like it definitely does feel that my brand is naturally speaking more to women who are similar age to me. And I've seen that progression as we go along. Like when I first started, I was definitely, I first started my Instagram page, which is where I hang out most of my community, when I was only 31. So it was at that point I was very connected to everyone who were in their late 20s and very early 30s. And then naturally it's become more about speaking out about being in your mid 30s, and almost like 35 is kind of like that new benchmark now. But again, just to reiterate, like it is relevant for any age. And I never stop people who want to come to me and get coached, and I say, oh no, sorry, you're not in the right age bracket.
You're not 30 yet.
Yeah.
Like, so when you started the Instagram, was it just your personal Instagram kind of just, or did you start with the mission of like this being a side hustle or like a new career path?
When I first started my Instagram, it was because I had decided to become a coach. It was at a crossroads. So that was my turning 30 journey. I was 29. I used to be a lawyer and I really hated it. And I basically quit that when I was around, I actually quit the first time when I was 27. And then again, when I was 28. And then when I was 29, 30, I was like in lots of different jobs. I was working in sales and events and it just, nothing really seemed to stick. And I originally had done a psychology degree before I went on to study law. So I always knew, and I'd always said, oh, when I'm in my 30s, I'll come back to this psychology mindset world that I was really into and I really had a passion for. And then I decided, okay, I do want to become a coach. I discovered coaching and just loved the idea of it, loved the idea of helping people, working with them one-on-one, understanding their minds and like helping basically change their lives. And I started out as a career coach because I'd always struggled with the career. It was always like the sore point for me that I'd become this lawyer and gone down a very traditional route that was expected of me and then just never found really what I wanted to do. And then what happened was I was coaching for a couple of years. Nothing really ever took off. It was like I was helping people with their interviews and LinkedIn and, you know, CVs and things like this, but it never really felt like something really clicked. And then I think it was just two different things that happened at the time. It was firstly my own turning 30 journey that was really strong. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, life does not feel exactly what I thought it would be. So I was also going through my own turning 30 process. And then the other thing that happened was that everyone I was coaching seemed to be on some sort of age-related panic journey. So I had lots of clients who were like, I'm coming up to 30, I need to find out what to do next. I've recently turned 30, I want to quit my job and find what I want to do. I also had many women who were about to turn 40 and were like, okay, you know, enough is enough. I want to go back and figure out what I want to do. So it was from both of those things. And then I was like, okay, so this is a really relevant age group. Plus I actually have my own story with it. And I was still, you know, it's a never ending journey. I'm still on it now. And that's where it was born from. And in terms of whether it was a side hustle or not, it started out not as a side hustle. It then became a side hustle again because I couldn't make it work at the start. So then I went back and worked in high tech and did a few other things on the side for around 18 months. And then exactly 3 years ago, I took it full time and I've been full time ever since.
That's incredible. So I would love to talk about any feelings that you needed to overcome to leave law. So is there like, did you go to law school in the UK?
Yeah, I studied law school and I did my training in the UK. I qualified as a UK lawyer.
What's the like student loan situation over there? Because I would imagine that a lawyer going to traditional, you know, undergrad and then law school is probably coming out somewhere north of 200,000 in debt, maybe a little less than that if it was, you know, a few years ago, but like, is that similar over there?
I know it's really different in the US in terms of law school, and it's very different in the UK. So I did have a student loan for my psychology degree, but it was before, it was like, you know, it's been, gosh, I guess like 18 years since I started my undergraduate degree. And that degree was very, 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 if I tell you it, if I remember correctly, the fees for it per year were like £1,000 or something ridiculous. Like you can't even imagine. It was before the fees went up, and the fees even now are nothing compared to what it is in the States. So I did get the student loan, but for my first degree. Now, when you go to study law, if you study corporate law, if you intend to work in corporate law and not in something like, you know, in the good types of law, like family law or you know, human rights or something like this, then you basically get almost sponsored by a big law firm. So you actually don't take a student loan. And what happens is, and it's crazy the way that it works. When I was 22 and I decided I want to go and now convert to be a lawyer, before I'd even done any legal training or anything, you go out to the law firms and go on this really intense interview process. Once you get, it's called a training contract. So once you get your training contract, they basically pay you to study. So they cover the fees of 2 years of law school, which is like very large fees. And they give you a subsidy. They give you money so you can rent. So it sounds really impressive, right?
But at the same time,
it's great in terms of, it means for me, I didn't have support from family, and it was like, you know, I didn't have any money at the time. I was 22 years old. How would I have afforded to do it without taking on this huge loan? But it gives you a way that you can, for me, I'm from Manchester and I really wanted to move to London. It was like all my friends were there and I saw myself as this big city lawyer in a law firm. And then it made it possible for me. Now I still had to work and, the money they give you isn't enough to pay rent and live in London for 2 years, but it basically means that you get to do it. But, a big but, you basically have to sign a contract. You have to sign a contract that you will then work for the law firm for the first 2 years to finish the training, which doesn't seem like that much of a big deal, but you're pretty much signing a 4-year contract into something that you've never studied before. So I came out of the psychology degree, was like, I want to be like everyone else. All my friends were doing law. Loads of my friends in college were doing law as well. So I was like, that sounds cool. I want money. I want to wear a suit. I want to be important. And then you're just signing it away. And then all of a sudden I'm like, started my first day of work after 2 years of law school. And I was like, oh, oops, no, this isn't really for me. Can I leave now? And then it's like, well, if you want to pay them like $60,000, then you can leave.
Right. So, okay. So the reason I had asked is because I feel like there's 2 layers of guilt when somebody's got a degree that they maybe didn't do their full homework on. And it's the financial of like, I just bought this degree. But then I think the deeper one is like I don't know if it's shame, embarrassment. They feel stuck. Like I chose this. I invested time in this. I can't not do this. Can you talk through how, and like, chiropractic is amazing. So like the last thing I ever want to do is talk someone out of chiropractic. In fact, like more of the time I'm like, hey, let's find a way that this career can fulfill you. But there are people, it does exist, that they got this degree, they started practicing and they're like, oh shoot, I don't like it. So what did you have to work through personally to leave law behind?
It's so funny because when I'm looking back now, obviously I was 25, 26 and I was first got the job and actually started training and was in the law firm. And I don't know how I actually dealt with the emotions of it, because I think it's exactly like you said, it's the shame of committing to something and then having to basically uncommit to it. And it's really hard. It's like breaking up with a version of yourself that you thought that you knew and that you don't know anymore. And it's really, really difficult. But I'm a big believer that that little niggle, that little like thing under the surface, if you really know it's not aligned for you, and I did know, for me, I did know, like, I don't really care about law, didn't really feel like connected to the people around me. I didn't look at the lawyers ahead of me and think, oh, I want to be like them. The work itself didn't like really appeal to me. That niggle is only going to get louder and louder and louder. So I think for me, whilst I felt immense shame and embarrassment, and it was very much connected to the fact that all my friends were doing the same thing, the fact that in my like community, in my family, I don't want to say my family because my parents are very, very liberal and they never really put pressure, but in my wider family, kind of like aunts, uncles, grandparents, it was very expected of me to do this and go down like a more secure route. And I was the one that left to go to law school. And, my grandma would talk about me at dinner parties as that, the beloved granddaughter who'd gotten this big fancy law firm job. So even though I had to overcome a lot of that shame and embarrassment, I was really aware that the longer I stayed, the worse it would get. And I think in terms of money, like it would be worse. When you start training, you're on a good salary for that age, but the minute that you qualify, that's it. You're going to jump up and up and up and up. And I saw it as like a train that I just wasn't going to be able to get up, and the train was going to go faster and faster. And I had a huge fear of being stuck in a life that wasn't meant for me. So for me, I feel like I did run away from it a little bit, but I was just really true to myself and just decided, you know what, I'm going to regret this in 10 years if I don't do it now. And the more I wait, the harder it will become. And that almost like having those thoughts made it easier for me to say, okay, like, let's go and explore what else there is. And that was hard. And maybe your audience will feel the same if you've really committed to one path. Like, I never done anything else before. I studied psychology, but that was it. Like, I was very academic. So it wasn't like I had loads of hobbies or loads of different interests outside. It was like law. That was all I knew. And I get that a lot with clients. They're like, but I don't know anything else. So I've got to stay here in this one thing. And I think it's about giving yourself that opportunity to go and explore other things.
Yeah. I feel like there is, so especially, there's a whole group of people that can really relate to this. And I would imagine just from some of the things I've heard you say that you could relate to it in your past or maybe still can. But there's this like thing as a child where you're asked like, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I learned quickly. I guess this is a subconscious thing. I don't remember like learning how to manipulate adults. But I remember like it was a doctor, right? Like, so we're like, oh, if we give them this job, they don't want to hear music. Well, at a certain age, let's talk about like a 13 or 14-year-old. It's cute to say you want to be a famous movie star when you're 6, but like if you're like 16 years old and you're like, this is what I'm going to be, so it's like you learn like, okay, I like getting this validation back from this adult that like, I'm going to go do this impressive thing. Like you talked about your grandma talking about like at dinner parties and then you're like in the hustle for high school and grades and this and that. And then like, obviously after high school, you're going to go to a 4-year degree because that's what you do. And then you go to the 4-year degree. And then like, after that, you go on to grad school because that's what you do. And there's just kind of this like, go, 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 please, please, please go, just like go in the path that society is like really happy that you're doing. And you don't have to justify any decisions. Like, well, what are you going to do after college? I'm going on to get a graduate degree. People are like, oh,
yeah,
yay.
You won.
Yes. And so I feel like it is at a certain point, whether for a lot of those people, whether it happens in their 20s or their 30s or their 40s, or maybe their 50s, where they're like, oh, when did I start making decisions for myself? Do you feel like that is a part of, because you talked about the turning 30 is more of this phase of life of growing up. Do you feel like that's a part of that?
100%. For me, and I know for so many of my community and my clients, that turning 30 or almost like 28, 29 is the first time when they actually start questioning decisions that they've made. For me, obviously, it happened a little bit younger with the career stuff, and then the other stuff followed. But, many people just saunter through their 20s and don't know any different. And exactly like you said, that on this, like, it's almost like a computer game that everyone's going to do the same thing. You graduate high school, some people maybe take a gap year, but most people go straight to college. Then you do that for however many years, maybe then grad school, then you get your first job, and then maybe you get a second job. And it's only really when you have a reason to
make sure you get married and have kids and buy a house during that time too.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm thinking that happens like from the ages of 25 to 30, paths can diverge. It's either like exactly what you said, marriage, mortgage, babies, and that starts happening for some people. Or the other path happens where they just like still going out and doing their thing, and people are still traveling and figuring stuff out. But then at 30, everyone goes, well, why, if you have been enjoying life, because your 20s is supposed to be fun.
Now it's done.
Then it's like, why? But all of a sudden, but you don't have enough money to buy an apartment, and then it's like, well, sorry, what you told me I was supposed to enjoy my 20s. Very confusing messaging. But back to the original question. Yeah, I think that 30 is a signpost for many, many people to start to ask those big questions, to start to say, when do I decide something for me that's not already decided for me? When can I do something that isn't just because my sibling did it, my older sibling did it, or my cousins, or this is what I thought was the best thing for me? Like you said, people are constantly praising you for making mainstream decisions. So I think that's very, very true. And I think it is very age related.
Do a lot of your clients struggle when you ask them like, well, what do you like?
Yeah, a lot. I think that's the biggest thing. I call it in my coaching that I don't know. Like clients get stuck in this, they come to me and they're like, I just don't know anything. And it's like a label. We say it's like a cock block. Like you literally are putting a label on yourself saying
cock block.
A cock block. Yeah. It's like, you tell yourself, I don't know. It's like having a label on your head, like, I don't know. And I'm like, but you do know, but you're just not letting yourself know. And it can be really annoying when you're coaching someone and they say, but I really don't know. And I'm like, well, let's just pretend that we know for 1 minute. What other things would you like to do? And usually they say, oh, I'd really love to be a writer. Oh, I'd really love to be a presenter. Things like this, like the dreams come up, but they've been hidden under all these years of social conditioning. But it's a really normal thing to not know and to not have clarity. And that's exactly what I had. Like when I came out of the legal profession, I was like, I don't have a clue, because I never asked the question before, because I'd always been masked by this, just doing what everyone else was doing.
Hey, She Slayers, are you looking to get your team off the phone and streamline your front desk so you can spend more time doing what you love? Sked has exactly what you're looking for. They will automate all your appointment reminders, missed appointment reminders, reactivation campaigns, allow you to have two-way texting with your patients. Plus, they have a very cool app that your patients are going to love. The app alone saves chiropractors tons of time because it gives patients the flexibility to move appointments to a time that works better for them. Don't worry, you won't lose control of your schedule because you'll have access to all the parameters that keep you still in control. Plus, there's overbook protection, so your schedule won't get out of hand. Sked was created by a chiropractor for chiropractors, so you can rest assured that you're getting the absolute best system for your office. Dr. Eric Kowalski is committed to the chiropractic mission, and he works closely with his developers to always be innovative so that we have the best system available. If you're hesitant to switch to Sked because you already use something else, let me tell you, it's worth every penny. Plus, mention that you heard about it on my podcast and they'll give you a discount. Seriously, it is a game changer. Don't wait. Hey, She Slayers. So a question I get asked a lot is, what have I found that works best to get new patients in the door? Well, my friends over at the Pediatric Experience have put together the ultimate branding and marketing playbook that does a comprehensive job to answer this question, and they even include a free video training that comes with it. This free guide reveals the secrets to a kick-ass, wildly effective marketing system that consistently brings in over 20 new patients every single month. And guess what? It's all organic. Picture this, a proven approach that will grow your patient numbers while you focus on doing what you do best, providing exceptional chiropractic care. Inside the playbook, you'll discover the 5 core elements of this powerful marketing system. From crafting a compelling brand to implementing strategic marketing strategies, they've got you covered. If you know PX, Dr. Tony and that crew, they practice exactly what they preach, and it's no different in the latest PDF Plus training they've put together for you. So if you're ready to attract more patients through the door, grow your practice, and dominate your local market, this guide is a must-have for you. So check out the link in the description to get your free download and video training. And so then once people like find that, they're like, oh, actually, I do want. Did they struggle with like, okay, I can't imagine that they're like, all right, well, I guess I'm an author now. I'm going to go do that. Like, what struggles do they have then as far as actually putting that into place with their career?
I think it is the getting started and the unknown and following a new path. It can be really
And
scary.
probably money.
I think yeah, exactly.
There's
Like
the
a lot of
obvious bridge of like, okay, but this job pays me this, and this current one I'm taking on is currently at 0.
right. And also it's like taking many steps back, which can feel really scary at 30. For many people who are in their early 30s, they've been in the working world already for X amount of years, from between like 8 to 5 years at this point in a real job. And then all of a sudden you want to have a career change. And then it's like, okay, so how can I make that work? If I need to study, if I need to go into an entry level job, if I need to, do something different, how can I fund that? And maybe you already do have a mortgage. Maybe you already do have student loans that you need to pay off. Like, it is a difficult time, but there's a quote somewhere, I think I've seen it on Instagram, something like, the longer you wait, the more time it's going to take. So you're never you're the youngest that you are today. So if you want to do something new, now is the time to do it. And I think it's about putting your ego to the side. I can share from personal experience that at the age of 32, I got a job working in a tech firm in sales, a completely entry level job. The other girl who got the job with me, we started on the same day, was 10 years my junior and had no work experience. And I've got 8 years of work experience and a law degree, like and a legal, I'm a lawyer. So it was really having to put my ego to the side and say, okay, so I'm taking a step back to take a step forward, because this specific job was what I call a bridge job, which is the job that you get in the middle when you just need a job to pay the bills so you can actually on the side work on your side hustle. So that was what that was for me. But it's really difficult, and I want to acknowledge that when you're at that age and you want to do something new, you do sometimes have to take a big step back to later take a huge step forward. And I don't regret that for a second. And I always recommend it to clients.
I mean, I cannot, like, ego is not a small thing for people to overcome. And so many people don't even do the work to realize that they have an ego, right? Like, how did you overcome that moment in yourself? Because like, I just picture if you were my coach and I was like, yeah, it was my first day in this bridge job, and this 21-year-old, and she's engaged too, like, whatever, let's just make it whatever. And I just picture you being like, well, that's your ego, Lauryn. Me being like, thanks a lot, Emma. I feel so much better. I would be a worse guy.
Yeah, it is hard. And I think that I wouldn't say that, by the way, if you're my client, just for everyone listening, I wouldn't go with that. But I just think that if you're asking like how I did it, or like how I basically could commit to it, I think it was because I had a really strong why. In coaching, we talk a lot about the why, like the mission, like really what you wanted. It would have been much harder for me to put my ego to the side if I didn't have a path and I was just starting this job and it just was like, oh, I just need a job to pay, to pay for my life. But for me, it was like, no, I'd found life coaching. I'd trained as a life coach. I'd started my business. I'd unsuccessfully, I'd not managed to get it off the ground within that first year. So I'd entered back into the working world. And I was like, no, this is just temporary. I need to do this, or I want to do this. It was a really great job because it was related to coaching. Like what I was selling was related to coaching. And I knew I was going to learn loads of things. And I was like, okay, it's fine. Like 1 year. And it really was just 1 year that I'm going to do this. And I just didn't make it mean anything about me. I'd like detached from that narrative of, oh, I'm this age and I'm, I could have gone down the victim like path of all my friends in London were all like, being made managers and senior associates at the law firm, and they were all getting promotions on promotions and, really far ahead in their career. But for me, it was like a lot about accepting that my path was different to others. I was on a different timeline. I was a late bloomer in terms of my career and actually all aspects of my life. Like, and I actually just, I'm speaking about it in retrospect. At the time, it didn't come so easy, but there was something almost like refreshing to be different and refreshing to just say, okay, this is a different thing that I expected. And the ego was there. I did get frustrated and I accepted those frustrations, but I just kept connecting with the mission. Okay, if future me in 1 year's time or 2 years' time is going to be a successful life coach with fully booked clients, what would she tell you to do? And it was always the same answer. Just go to work, do the work, and come home. And actually, I really liked that job. And I got promoted very quickly to be a manager because they saw it and they were like, oh, this is ridiculous. After 3 months, they were like, no, like you need to train everyone.
They were trying to suck you back in.
Yeah, it didn't work. But so I also think that was also something like to play a part of it. And listen, like, I don't, your listeners who are listening who do have to make those career jumps, and if they are having career changes, you might not always have to do what I did and go all the way back to entry level, but there is something there of like swallowing pride a little bit and owning the new journey or owning the new path.
Right. Well, and honestly, one way that I could see, so like I said, there is hopefully a small percentage. Well, I don't want to say that because then that's just, I don't know. I take that back. This is such a minefield of like within chiropractic, you're only supposed to talk good about chiropractic. Like it's the greatest thing in the world. And so it's this minefield for me of like, I don't want to. So there's going to be a percentage of people who are like, shoot, I think I want to leave chiropractic. I'm just not in this. And then there's also a big percentage. So within chiropractic, there's a really big push to like start your own practice. And so some people graduate and then work for another chiropractor for a little bit called an associate, like you're just an employee. But then like ultimately there is this pressure that why would you go into this to work for someone else? Like, when are you going to start your own? And so you brought up how difficult it is to take a step back. And I think the perceived step back that a lot of my audience could really struggle or grapple with is they started their practice. They started like they went into entrepreneurship. They thought this is like the epitome. Wait, the epitome is the top or the bottom? The climax of their career. Like this is what they're supposed to do. They have employees and taxes and all of, the buck stops with them. And they hate running a business and they want to just do what the degree is like take care of people. They don't want to have to deal with marketing. They don't want to have to deal with hiring and firing employees. And they want to, air quotes, take a step back and just work for someone. And that is a really difficult thing, kind of like we talked about with like that ego, where it's like they're having to let go that we have this idea that they're capable of running a business or, like that's a really hard thing, I think, for people to overcome.
So yeah, it's definitely relevant for what I was just speaking about, because I think that it's about being true to yourself. So in my coaching, and maybe you heard on my podcast, I speak a lot about authenticity, being aligned. And that in coach speak means really understanding what you want, what you like, what lights you up, and then following that and ignoring, almost drowning out the background noise of what other people think. So I can imagine it must be very difficult that if you have your own practice, but you're not really enjoying it, to take that step back and say, you know what, I really want to work for someone else. But again, it's really important to listen to what the authentic you wants, because do you want to live a life and have your owning your own business is a huge part of your life. So if you don't enjoy it, it can really take over. And you want to live an unhappy life based on what other people will think of you? Or do you want to actually do what you want to do and enjoy it? And if people think whatever, then let them think it.
Yeah. You talk about comparison a lot too. Were you someone who naturally struggled with that and had to overcome it, or not really? Because I know comparison's huge for me and it's obviously huge for a lot of people.
Now less so, because I've been on a huge journey with it. But when I was like 26, 27, a lot of my friends started doing all those things. So huge portion of my girlfriends from back home got engaged and got married from the ages of like 25. The engagement started, and most of the weddings were 26, 27. Had 13 weddings in 1 year when I was 27. And I'm not married now. So it's like, the years and years of sitting and being a guest in somebody's wedding and like thinking, why not me? And especially at that age when I hadn't really like gone into the self-development world, I didn't know anything about, I didn't really ever know how to air my feelings even to myself in my own head. So there were many times when I would be overwhelmed and overcome with comparison, because it was like I just didn't understand, like why is everyone else doing something different to me? And it felt really strong as well, because it wasn't even that I was sitting there thinking I really want to do this. It was like everyone's in a different stage of life, but I'm not ready for this. I still want to travel, and I still want to move country. I still want to meet people. I still want to have experiences. I still not figured out what job I even want to do. So I would say that I was thrown into a comparison frenzy, and it probably did come from childhood and my early childhood experiences in high school, and what it was like I went to a private girls' school in the UK, which is very kind of Hogwarts vibe, and everyone was pitted against each other. And many of us have this, if you go to a school where they put you in grades and sets, depending on your, how smart you are at maths and English, that's what they did in my school. We're like bred to compare. So I feel like most of us are not immune to comparison. Some of us definitely have higher comparison levels than others. But then over the years, I think, well, I know it's a result of doing this, the coaching work and therapy and understanding myself more, plus just really like connecting with other women who are on the same path to me and having friends who are more aligned with me. I eventually compare much less. And now, so I think my biggest comparison probably comes up in the business world, like looking at other coaches and seeing where they are and thinking where I want to be and things on social media. But in terms of life stages, I feel like comparison is thing of the past now.
Do you feel like social media has actually helped that in a way where, you start putting things out there and I mean, you have a big following. And people are, I read through the comments and it's just like, I'm so glad someone finally said that, like, and so it's like, oh, okay, cool. There's like a bunch of us that feel this way. I'm not broken.
Yeah. Social media has two different sides to it. And I definitely focus more on the positive side. I definitely think for me, being able to grow my community, to what it is now, and being able to connect with so many other individuals who are going on their own, comparison journeys, turning 30 journeys, has just changed everything. It's that, that saying, find your tribe. I really used Instagram specifically to find my tribe. And I know that so many of my community use that, and it's such a benefit. And I love Instagram because of that. I've made honestly amazing friends who I've never even met before in all different places in the world, who we have connected over Instagram. And they're really, we have very nice friendships, and we're speaking a lot. Obviously, there's the not so good side of social media, which I think is specifically for those who are using social media, not for their business, and it's just a personal thing. I see it very much so that it's like, you can open your social media and just be like overwhelmed with how many baby announcements and engagements and weddings and all these kinds of things.
Instagrammable moments.
Yeah, those highlights that we think mean that everyone around us is really happy and we're left behind. But it's funny because, when I started my Instagram account, I started it from scratch. It wasn't my own personal account. I just opened it for the business. Now I do have an Instagram account. It's got like 300 followers, a personal one. It's got like 300 followers. I got a new iPhone a few weeks ago and I haven't even put it on yet, and I don't know the password. So, but I used to joke that if I ever wanted to feel bad about myself, I would just switch to my personal Instagram and have a quick scroll, and it would just be like, literally like everyone else's life is different to mine. And I'm talking about my old friends, and so I think the message from that is you get to curate what you see on Instagram. Now my Instagram feed is full of amazing messages, other people who really inspire me and expand me. And I very rarely look at people who I know. And my friends understand it. I'm using my Instagram for my business, but you can mute people that you don't want to see. Like, Instagram should be a safe place for you to come and feel safe and feel inspired and feel at least just neutral. You shouldn't be opening your social media every day and feeling less than and in comparison.
So you talked about how you had 30 weddings in a year. And so these were obviously your friends,
13, 1 3, 1
Oh,
3.
1 3. Okay. I was like,
oh my God, I could not have done 30.
13, still a lot. And did you notice that your friendships changed from your late 20s to your mid 30s? Like, was it difficult to still, because I'm assuming that those that got married then within a few years started having children, like, how did your friendships have to change in that way?
Friendships change drastically from your late 20s until your 30s. I think that it's a time where your friendships go through the biggest transitions. And I think it's not spoken about enough, because I think that there's this expectation that your friends will already be your friends by that point, whether it's from your home friends or your high school friends or your college friends or whoever, that's it. But actually, like we were just saying before, from the age of 25 to 30, people's paths diverge and they go on very, very different paths. So, I have a friend, even now at the age of 36, but I have friends who are still single, traveling the world, have no urge to settle down, still like to go to raves and parties. And I obviously have friends who have 4 kids and 2 houses and live in the suburbs and everything in between. And I think that for me personally, it was difficult, but it was also great because I got to meet lots of new people. I made amazing friends in my 30s, and every year I made new friends, and I really prioritize friendships. I really recommend prioritizing friendships. It's very important to have people around you who get you, whether that be at the similar stage of life, if you're a business owner, other business owners who can really relate to you. And it's difficult to not try and hang on desperately to those old relationships that have changed. But I think that it's important to allow them to evolve. And at some point, those friendships might come back. My friends from home, my original friends from when I was 12, 13 years old, a lot of the girls, they all have their 3rd babies by now. And when I see them, wow, I love to see them and catch up, and I see them every so often, but it's not like we're trying to pretend that we have the same lives. We don't. We have different lives. We have different interests. We talk about different things, and that's okay. And I think that those friendships will always be really sacred to me because they knew me at that part of my life when I was, going through life in my teenage years, and we have lots of amazing memories together. But our lives are different now. And I've made in the last 6-7 years since I've been in my 30s, really great friends who are also sacred to me. And they didn't know me when I was growing up, but they've known me in these really pivotal times in my life and been through big life changes with me and see me start a business and go through huge breakups and start new relationships. And I think there's something really special as well about those friendships. But my biggest piece of advice is to not expect that your friendships will stay the same. They absolutely won't, unless you just happen to have a small group of friends and you all just do the same thing at the same time, which is quite rare.
And then you all happen to make the exact same personal growth and you still align all the same. That is possible.
Exactly. It's possible. It's not that likely, but it is possible.
Right. But I like what you said, where it's like you can change, and like, my brain ranks things. And so it's really difficult for me to be like, this is my best friend though. And like, so I like how you said, like, they can still have a sacred friendship, but it's not, if you were ranking, they may not be the first, second, or third person you'd even call if a crisis hits today, type of thing. So I love that. So do you feel, we're going to turn a little more towards like intimate relationships. In my mind, I feel like in your 30s, like some of your friends are starting to get divorced. Like literally, that's the truth. The divorce rate just is a thing. And I feel like society, well, we don't love divorce, but like it's almost more acceptable to be 34 and getting a divorce versus 34 dating someone for the last 3 years. Everyone was like, oh, she's gonna get married. And then you're like, actually, we parted ways because do you agree with that?
Well, that's really interesting. I think both of them are just like awful for society. Just like anything
I
that isn't
can't
like
believe you.
like anything that isn't a romantic love story that ends in this perfection is just like people just want to put their hands over their eyes and ears and just ignore it.
You're ruining my life by you living your life.
Yeah. How dare you? How dare you do something that's different to what we all expected from you? For me, my story was the days leading up to my 33rd birthday, I broke off a 4-year relationship that was headed for engagement, and it was because it wasn't aligned in terms of the next steps. And I think that it was really shocking to people, and I think that people have a really hard time dealing with things not going in a linear way. Definitely.
Hi, friends. I wanted to take a quick break from the episode to make sure you all know about the cool stuff we have happening over on Patreon. This is a platform where I can offer you extra content, behind the scenes interviews, quick trainings, and exclusive trainings answering your exact question live, back to back with me. It's a way for me to more directly interact with you and post some fun things that would never be in the normal weekly episodes. To check out what we're doing and to sign up, click the link in the show notes. I'd like to take a moment to thank one of our primary sponsors of the podcast, Insight CLA. The Insight tech moves the message off the spine and into the nervous system, where the magic of the adjustments can be measured and tracked. Everyone from newborns to seniors are being scanned in my practice and in thousands of other practices like ours, so they can be examined and inspired to choose chiropractic care. It's like an instant referral machine because the scans are so visible and informative. Like, what patient wouldn't want to know how their nervous system is performing? The staff at CLA are ready to take care of you and answer any questions you may have. They also have an incredible online academy that can help train everyone in the office and help them to feel confident on how to get perfect scans and how to interpret the results. We have been using the Insight technology in our clinics for over 7 years now, and it is a complete game changer for conversion, retention, and patient education. Click the link below in the show notes as She Slays listeners get preferred pricing and hundreds of dollars off their purchase.
Hey, She Slayers, I have partnered with Well Aligned and Above Down Apparel to give all of my listeners something really special. So listen up, don't skip. A free premium t-shirt. Okay, you get a free t-shirt. So just head over to wellaligned.com/she slays to claim your listener offer. That's all you got to do. Above Down has the coolest and most comfy chiropractic tees that showcase your personality. My favorite is the Mabel. I love it. They're super soft and a great conversation starter if you do seek conversation with, your patients. We call it table talk. What more can you ask for? So I've also been using well-aligned materials for years to educate my patients. They have high quality ROF folders, patient handouts, office forms, posters, and a ton more. So why recreate the wheel when there's a perfectly designed communication tool ready for you to help educate and inform? Head over to wellaligned.com/she slays to claim your free t-shirt. And I'll drop a link in the show notes so you can check it out.
Yeah. Because I would assume that, like linear, like you date, you're supposed to get married now because the like fertility cliff is coming. Like that has got to be one of the most annoying things to be a woman in your 30s and deal with like people really feeling like it is their place to talk to you about, well, do you want kids? Like, what are you going to do about this?
Yeah, totally. And I speak a lot in my content about the fertility cliff and actually trying to not necessarily disprove it. I'm not a doctor. I don't have medical education, so I can't say, that it is wrong, but it is definitely on the research that is the basis of the fertility cliff is very outdated. So it's from French farmers from like the 1800s, basically. And that's what, the sample of women who were sampled are from a completely different day and age. They had completely different, even like, what's the word? Like the death rate was ridiculous. Lifespan was completely different. And we're now told, and they were basically studied, and it was found this huge cliff that happened at 35. And it's just not taking into account the modern day woman in 2023 who also has access. Most of us have access to some sort of fertility treatments if need be. And it's just, it really annoys me. It's like one of the things that I get really, really frustrated about, because I see it so much, and it happened with me as well, is that, turning 30 is one thing, but then turning 35 and being childless is terrifying. It's literally terrifying, because from popular culture and also society in general and the medical world, I will say as well, because doctors
at 36, you're called a geriatric pregnancy in the US.
35, yeah.
35.
Yeah. And
we couldn't come up with a better word than geriatric.
I know, it's just insane, isn't it? And it's like, people, myself included, have literal breakdowns. If you're childless, and especially if you're single, turning 35 for me 1 year ago was really hard. It was my hardest birthday. It was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, this
because of the child thing.
Because I want
more so than marriage.
Yeah, because I would like to be a mom, and it's like, oh my God, my time is running out. My time is absolutely not running out. And I know that now. And I'm the kind of person that when I get a bee in my bonnet about something, I can like do research for hours and hours and hours. And like, I literally am like become expert on things. And I now understand that, yes, obviously your eggs are decreasing in quality and quantity the older that we get. It's not a lie that we have a biological clock, and it's not something that we should ignore or put to the side, but it does not happen on the minute that you turn 35. And many, many, many women have successful pregnancies until their 40s, if not even later. So there's something to be said there for raising awareness of that, because this fertility cliff is just debilitating. And it's something that I really experience, and I know a lot of clients experience. And it's hard. It's a hard one, because we can't really come out and say, we have all the time in the world. We don't. There is something there about having to address it. But there's also something there of really knowing that it's not, it's not the end of the world. It's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
You said you were on your Instagram, like that one of the things you're focusing on is your fertility. What kind of things are you doing?
So for me, I froze my eggs. So it was something that I was considering doing when I came out of this relationship at 33. I quite soon after realized, oh my God, I'm dating in a really like non-productive way because I was trying to meet somebody, you know, as husband hunting. And then I said no. And I did all the fertility tests. You do what we call a fertility MOT, which basically just tells you if you do have something to worry about. Many women or most women will have a normal range of fertility, but you never know. And I think that everyone has the right to understand their hormones and, you know, understand what's going on. Single, not single, wanting a baby, not wanting a baby, like you have the right to go and check it. So I checked mine, and then I decided then everything was looking good, and I said, okay, I'm going to go traveling. And I went to Costa Rica for 5 months and had an amazing trip, and then I got back and I was kind of like, I'm not ready to freeze my eggs, everything's good. And then when I did turn 35, the panic set in again, and then I think I was dating someone for a short time, and it broke off, and that was like the push that I needed to freeze them. So I froze them coming up to 1 year ago. And for me, that was just taking control of my fertility. And then apart from that, I'm just very aware of what I eat. Like, I'm not every day eating for my fertility, but I'm very like healthy, and I want to live a healthy life because I know that when the time comes that I do want to have a baby, that is what you eat and your diet and the lifestyle that you live is actually equally as important as your age. You know, people can be having really, really destructive diets from the age of 28, and that will affect them getting pregnant. So yeah, I think every woman has the right to plan for her future family, whether she's single or not, if that's where she is in her life and wants to think about it. And we shouldn't have to wait for a man to rescue us to make us even think of those things.
Well, speaking of men, do you feel like, so I mean, okay, we've covered the societal like push for a career. We didn't really talk about how like, and that career should make you rich. You should be like,
money
you
in
should
the
be
bank.
rich in your 30s.
Yep,
so
totally.
you can retire a millionaire. So
Totally.
you should get married and then have children. So in all of these topics, do you feel like men is there a turning 30 podcast for men?
No. No. It's not that it's not relevant for men. I've only had one male client. He came into a group program that I did. He was incredible.
I would imagine they feel the career thing. Right?
I was going to say, but they do and they don't. Like, they feel it, but turning 30 for men is about money and career for sure, if there's going to be a milestone for them. But for men, I think 40 is maybe 35, and then 40 is more of that time when they start to really think, okay, I want to actually think about having a family now. And obviously it is different pressures. Male fertility isn't actually as spoken about as it should be because it's a huge indicator.
It's a huge issue right now.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously we like hear of all these like famous celebrities having children into their 80s. So men think that they can have children to whatever age. But in general, men don't worry about these things in the same way. And I think also in general, men are less into the self-development things. I know that's changing, and there are a lot more men who are becoming more conscious and mindful, but in general, women are more likely to, you know, engage in a coaching podcast and you know, go down this route. But no, men, I speak to a lot of men, and they very rarely tell me they were having a crisis when they turned 30. They're kind of like, oh, I turned 30. Great.
And maybe it's 40, but like, I wonder if all of that is linked to this old research. Like, is everything, because, you know, we're humans and we're designed to procreate, right? So like in our like genetic coding, even when we don't think we're consciously making decisions based on procreation, like it might be that. So I'm wondering if men just don't feel that push because on this like deep subconscious level, they feel like they have all the time in the world. And like, how would a woman live her life if she felt like she had all the time in the world?
It's a great question. And, you know, a lot of women say, you know, they come to me and my next steps are, I really want to find a partner because I really want to have kids and I really want to be a mum. And then actually they start to tell me their lives. And I'm like, something's not measuring up, because if you want to do all these things, but you're actually still traveling and, enjoying yourself and you're doing everything else. And I say, if you didn't have a biological clock right now, would you actually be ready to meet someone? And they're like, absolutely not. If I could have kids in 10 years and I knew I could have kids in 10 years and it would be successful, I wouldn't think about it right now. So I think if the pressure was off for women, they would probably act very differently. And then even the inverse of that, like women, I think, quote unquote, scare men away, not meaning to that sound anti-feminist, but as in they date in a way that becomes not productive for them. So they don't really show how amazing they are and how incredible as women they are, and show their true, value in the world, because they're trying to fit themselves into this box of being this good person that needs to be picked. And I always think, and I tell this to clients, like, just throw away any of these pressures and timelines and just go and be you. Because the minute that you try to, be someone else, it's going to really be very hard for somebody to feel that energy. And I want to say that was very true for me. So people might be triggered listening to that, because I know that a lot of people, a message that like that can land difficult, like in a challenging way. But for me, I did feel the pressures. It was definitely in some ways leaking through when I was dating, and definitely the way I felt about myself in the dating world. When I froze my eggs, I just felt this huge relief of pressure. I was just like, the minute after I did the egg retrieval and I had a nice number of eggs, and I just said, oh, thank God, I can just relax and recover now. I met my boyfriend 2 weeks later, because it was like I didn't care anymore. And I was just so open and so like, oh, I just want to just be me, be myself. And then it was like, okay, here we go. And I just think it's so much to be said for just taking that pressure off.
Well, yeah, you said you were husband hunting at some point, right? Like, and then you were like, and there's so many, to kind of circle back to what we were talking about, there's so many women and men, sure, that are in their 30s and 40s, and they really don't know why they're unhappy. They don't know who they are. And I would imagine a good portion of them were focused on like finding a husband, because that was the next stage, being the role that husband wanted. Then it was like creating the wedding that Instagram wanted, and then having the babies that their parents needed, like society needed them to have. And like, for me, I really, really wanted babies. And then I also wanted a career. So like some women are like, they really want babies, and then they just 100% become a mom. And then their kids get older, and then they look to this relationship and they're like, shoot, like, what? Who am I? And it's like, well, I don't know. Let's go back to 22 when you were husband hunting and playing this role.
Yeah, so. Totally. I think I see a lot of women doing that as the two categories. It's someone who's in their 30s and hasn't done all the things yet. And then I also have to see a lot of women who have done all the things and they're like, oh no, I'm not fulfilled. This isn't actually what I wanted. So it's also important to remember, when we think of the grass being greener, we can often look at other people's lives when we're comparing and be like, oh, that person has everything that I want. And it's like, okay, but are they really happy? Some might be, but many people aren't.
Yeah. Okay. So how can someone work with you? We've obviously talked about you do coaching and you have a podcast.
Yeah. So if you want to get to know more about me and what I do, then I'm mostly hanging out on Instagram. So my handle is at Turning 30 Coach, the 30, the number's 30. And I also have my Turning 30 podcast, which is like, we have conversations like this all the time. I have some solo episodes and also lots of interesting guest episodes. Of course, I'm a coach as well. I currently have a very limited number of one-on-one coaching spots. I think I only have one left. I'm not sure when you're bringing the episode out, but definitely if it's something that you're interested in, take a look on my Instagram. It will be in the bio. It's an application only process. And then I'm also running a retreat in the UK. So I know most of your audience are probably in the States, but we actually have 3 women flying in from the States for it. So I'm still gonna mention it. That's going to be in August in the UK, and it's called the Align Retreat. And what it really is about is, really being true to who you are and learning what society says you should do, and how to actually live your own path. And for now, they're the main ways that you can work with me, and I have lots of exciting things coming up. So if you're interested in this conversation and what we've been speaking about today, definitely come and join me over on Instagram, and you can see what's on offer there.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you so much. I know that when you're a podcast host,
you have to you're like, I'm always recording. And then to go on someone else's podcast is like, oh shoot. And then I can't even use that for my podcast. So I understand that like give take of like, sure, I'll make content for your podcast. So,
no, I love it. I love being interviewed. It's my favorite.
It's so
like,
much easier than being a host, isn't it? You're like, I just get to show up and answer questions.
Yeah, I like it because you definitely have to think less. And also it's just fun because I spend loads of time asking everyone else questions. And now I get to be like, let me tell you my journey.
Yes.
So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. All right. She's Slayers. Go check her out on Instagram. It's very entertaining and inspirational. I really enjoy your Instagram quite a bit. And until next week, bye.